welcome to Go There on Fourth. This is a Christian podcast about faith, football, and fantasy football. I am Pastor Jason Barnett, aka the Dirt Path Pastor, and I'm joined here today with my friend Jeff Horn. Glad to have you with us today. Jeff has been in the fantasy league with me this year. He comes to the church here at Ravenna Church, the Nazarene, where I pastor at. And we're both fortunate we made the playoffs this year, aren't we?
I'm very, very happy to be there. It wasn't looking good for a little while.
No. Jeff, I'm sure will share with us when we get to our team struggles here in a little bit. But just know, I don't think any of his running backs on his roster are the ones he started off with. So
I still have Damian Pierce. Not sure he's going to do me anything from here on.
So we are not football experts. We just love the game of football. We love fantasy football. We're just enjoying the community that comes with it. And we're sharing with you kind of our journey and making some terrible game picks along the way. So with that being said, Jeff, we're gonna make some game picks. We're gonna pick these early Thursday, Saturday, and early Sunday games. 20 and 86 on the season as far as picks go, but I'm 2-2 versus guests. I was off to a hot start, but then Nicole kind of humbled me, and then Brandon really took me to the woodshed last week.
So you may get back on the right track this week.
Last week. So first up, Jeff, we have the 49ers versus the Seahawks. I really do like the Seahawks this year. I think Pete Carroll's done an amazing job. I think it's kind of proven his system it works in the NFL. Playing for him. They play hard for him. Although I don't think they win this week. I think the 49ers are the better team. They're hot right now. I just saw a report that Purdy is going to start today. So I think that just adds to it. So I'm picking the 49ers.
Well, I really like Geno.
Mm-hmm.
And I have enjoyed watching Walker and his running. But sadly, he's kind of last week or so, and I too am going to take the 49ers. Don't really want to, but that's where I'm at.
All right, Colts versus the Vikings. Now, I'm a Colts fan. You know this. I've shared it very publicly from the pulpit many times and on this podcast repeatedly. Although I was very disappointed in their last game, I'm still picking the Colts. I'm not so sure, again, if I am picking this as a fan or actually I believe they're going to win. Although I do think the Vikings are going in the wrong direction, especially on defense. And all the experts are saying the Colts receivers should go off. I'll believe it when I see it. But with that being said, I'm picking the Colts just because I'm a Colts fan. I can't pick against them.
I'm not a Colts fan, but I also am going with the Colts. I think a large part of the reasoning is I'm not sure that Minnesota's defense is going to do what they need to win. I think Colts, their defense is played fairly well at times, and yeah. I think maybe they're able to stay in the game. Unlike a lot of people, I kind of like the Jeff Saturday thing, and he's kind of gotten a bad negative talk that. And I'm kind of rooting for him, even though, like I say, I'm not a Colts fan, and I'm picking them this week.
Yeah, he has kind of got the raw deal. And that said, if you look at the Colts statistically, coming out of the first quarter and then out at halftime, they've actually played a lot better since Jeff Saturday's been there. So whatever he's saying in the locker room, it's having an impact. It's just not having enough impact to last through the end of the half, the end of the game. So.
We'll see how that all plays out, I suppose.
All right, Ravens versus the Browns. You know, I don't like Watson at all. I'm still surprised the NFL was letting him play this season, but I do think this is as a Brown this week. I think the Ravens struggled against Pittsburgh last week. I don't think Lamar's playing this week either. I haven't heard one way or the other.
I haven't heard either.
But I think the Browns are going to find a way to get it done and beat the Ravens this week.
I'm going with the Ravens. The Ravens defense has done really well for me the last several weeks. I think this may be kind of a low scoring game. Um, but then I also um, hoping that he has a really good game against the Browns run defense. And so, yeah, I'm going with the Ravens.
Dolphins versus the Bills. I want to pick the Dolphins, but I saw an interesting meme yesterday on Facebook. The Dolphins, I think it was last week, or no, it was the Chargers. Chargers of last weekend, and it was in the low in LA, and heaters on the sideline to warm their players up because the cold in LA.
They're going to have problems.
Yes, they're going to Buffalo, and I think 7 inches of snow is predicted for Saturday when this game is played, and it's going to be getting dark, and that temperature is going to drop fast. They're up, in the Northeast, especially right there. Snow, lake effect snow. You get the cold winds off of it. So as much as I like the Dolphins this year, and I want to pick the Dolphins, I'm going with the Bills. I think the weather is going to play a big time factor in this game, and give the Bills an advantage.
I'm also taking the Bills, and I am going to make a bold prediction for a 40-plus yard score.
Oh man, this could be the week though. He's due for one.
He's due.
He hasn't had one for a few weeks. Get Thursday night, and then the 3 Saturday games. So if you're not, make sure you pay attention to the NFL schedule this week. There are 3 Saturday games. Here late in the season, they like to start college football not competing with them nearly as much as before. Starting the early Sunday ones with the Falcons versus the Saints. Saints have some really cool fan groups online. Since I've been doing the podcast, I've been trying to go around and I follow all the different NFL team pages, and I've fans groups, and I'll make some comments about the teams they were playing. So shout out to the Saints fans. Bunch of people. I'm thinking the Saints in this one. I think the Falcons, going the wrong way. I just like that Saints, especially going back. So
on that one.
The Bears. I've been seeing a lot of things from the Bears fan groups and pages saying that Justin Fields is like the king of the gridiron and the best quarterback the Bears have ever had, type stuff already. And my question is, they're 3-10. Yeah. They haven't beat anybody yet, so we'll see. I mean, part of that getting crowned the greatest quarterback involves winning. I mean, as much as I love Peyton Manning, I say Tom Brady's the best because of the Super Bowl rings, because he wins games. Not so much this year, but in years past. I'm going Eagles versus Bears. I'm going to get with the Eagles in this one. I think they take the Bears.
Yeah, I'm taking the Eagles as well. I think the offense is going to be too much.
Lions versus the Jets. Lions are as hot as anybody right now. I think they beat the Jets. This is 2 teams, though, I think that are fighting and crawling into the playoffs. I just think the Lions are hot right now, and I think the Jets, the Mike White injury, some interesting questions up the move, especially if Wilson ends up back in the starting lineup. So
yeah, I think that would be tragic for the Jets. I had some Jets receivers, and it didn't go well when he was. Matter of fact, Garrett Wilson I had for a while, and wish I had him again, but it just wasn't getting it done for me at the time, and so I too am taking.
Steelers versus the Panthers. This one was a hard one for me to pick, actually. It's 2 teams that I don't think are going to be playoff teams, even though the Panthers are technically still in the playoff picture. And I think part of me thinks that the Steelers are going to find some way to get back to 500, or at least close to it. But I haven't heard anything about Kenny Pickett this week, if he's in the concussion protocol. I'm assuming he is, considering he was taken out of the game Sunday. And so then that leaves Trubisky as the starter, who threw 3 interceptions when he came in last week, or Rudolph coming in and leading the charge. I don't like any of the three quarterbacks on the Steelers against that Panthers defense right now. So I'm picking the Panthers to win, although it pains me defense is going to win a game.
Well, I'm taking the Steelers. I think I like them better in this spot, and I guess we'll see how that plays out.
That must be hard for you, though. Jeff here, he's a Bengals fan, so having to pick the Steelers to win.
But and actually, uh, Foreman is one of my backs that I'm starting this week, so I'm hoping he has a good game. But I don't know. That's but I think that Tomlin, he just, I don't know, he seems to find a way sometimes. They got the first game there,
Yeah.
and even though it seemed the Bengals had opportunity to win it, they managed to beat the Bengals. So some close games. They've under the circumstances they've dealt with, I think they've shown me enough that that's the route I'm taking. I'm going to pick the Steelers.
Next one is this one on paper. Looking at the records, you would think this. I was kind of struggling with this one too. The Cowboys versus the Jaguars. Jaguars and their team is kind of starting to figure it out a little bit. Lawrence has looked good the last couple of weeks. He looked really good last week. Like was it 360 yards and 3 touchdowns? And but I'm picking the Cowboys in this one. I think the Cowboys just have too much on better defense than the Jaguars do. I think the Jaguars line will struggle with the Cowboys front, Michael Parsons, and the Cowboys just signed one of my favorite Colts of all time, T.Y. Hilton. So I can at least cheer a little bit for the Cowboys now. Before, so
well, the Cowboys game last week with the Texans, that might give you a little bit of pause.
Yeah.
Might make you think twice about this game. But I think the Cowboys are certainly the favorite here. And
speaking of that, if you want a good fantasy strategy for picking up a fantasy defense, this is what's been working in our league. If you can find who's playing the Texans this week, you pick defense. And so the defense to pick up this week is the Chiefs because they're playing against the Texans. I don't know what the Texans are going to do. This might be one where the network might not even show the game because I think it can get ugly awful fast.
It's very possible. I too am taking the Chiefs. They're a fun team to watch, and got to see several of their games this season, and I've really enjoyed watching them. And I think they take this game.
Well, those are our early picks, Jeff. We have a lot of them in common. We have some of them that are different. The good news is we didn't go all the same down the column. That would make me feel bad.
Okay.
You remember in school where you looked at your friend's paper and you both had the same answers. You were a little nervous, like I know that guy over there.
Yeah, when I first started looking at your picks, I'm like, these are real similar, but then you do get down, and I think what we maybe had three or so in that group of games
Yep.
I think some of those games are pretty no-brainer. I think you're probably going to have a lot of people pick some of those the same.
Well, as I said, this is a podcast about faith, football, and fantasy football. And so for the faith portion, I like to share a devotion myself, or when I have a guest come on, I tend to ask them to share. And I've asked Jeff if he would be willing to come on and share a brief devotional with us about, I don't know, whatever God laid on his heart that he feels like we need to hear. So, Jeff, you got something for us?
Well, I kind of thought maybe I'd keep it with the season.
Mm-hmm.
We're bearing down on Christmas, and I thought I would maybe share what has in the last 3 or 4 years kind of become my favorite Christmas scripture, if you will. It's kind of non-traditional. It's not what, if you want the story of the wise men, you go to Luke.
Right.
If you want the announcement to Joseph and the coming of the wise men, you go to Matthew, and that's pretty standard. Where most of your sermons will come from, or a play that's based on scripture. That's kind of where you're going to get the majority of your Christmas text from one of those two books.
Right.
I actually am going to go to Matthew to start with, and this is New King James, Matthew 1, verse 23. It says, "Behold, with child and bear a son, and they shall call his name Emmanuel, which is translated God with us." And I just love that name given to Jesus. Now, there's a lot of names given, and there's a lot of names throughout Scripture that are associated with him, but that's one of my favorites. And what I want to talk about kind of stems from that name. The scripture that become kind of my favorite Christmas text is found in the first chapter of the book of John. And we don't really, most of the time, I don't think about John having the Christmas story
Right.
as part of its text. But the chapter starts out talking about the Word in capital W, talking about Jesus. And it kind of lays out that he was there from the beginning with God, that he was part of creation,
right?
That he was at the very start. And then if you skip on down, the verse that I really want to talk about, and I actually want to read it from the New King James, well, but then I've got a paraphrase that I just love the way it's given. So you may be more familiar with this New King James text. It's
right.
what seems to be maybe more common. But and the Word became flesh and dwelt among us, and we beheld His glory as of the only begotten of the Father, full of grace and truth. So he's been talking about we know he's talking about Jesus, and here in verse 24, he's saying the Word becomes flesh and dwells among us. Now, if message, I just love the verbiage that the message gives us for this verse. There's just something that it says that really kind of struck me the first time that I read it. That's in verse 24. It's actually 14. My eyes can't see that small print real well. So from the message, it says, the Word became flesh and blood, and we saw the glory with our own eyes. I just love the thought of him moving into the neighborhood.
Yeah.
And of course, we know he was born there in the stable in Bethlehem, and he was there in that neighborhood. But I think it's more than that.
Right.
It's that he became flesh. and he moved to our neighborhood,
Absolutely.
to where we are,
Right.
and he would come to us. And going back to the beginning, we had mentioned previously that he was there with the Father in the beginning, and we know that Adam, there in the third chapter, I think, uh, his disobedience caused a separation between him and God.
Right.
And he was forced out of the garden because of his disobedience, and there became a divide between man and God. You no longer had that relationship where God came and walked with him in the garden. And to the time of Moses, and Moses uh, receiving the law from God, and then the directions of putting a tabernacle together, and then and you have that curtain separating the two portions of the and then the temple that kept the people from the presence of God.
Right.
And so here in this scripture here in John, which is what I consider to be John's Christmas story, he's moving into the neighborhood. He's beginning the pathway to us to have that close fellowship with God again, without relying on a priest, without um, things that became necessary when Moses brings the law to the people.
Right.
And so you have this idea that he's come, and he's there, and I love that thought.
That's awesome.
At this time of the year, that he's beginning the process to bring God and man back to a place where they can have that personal relationship. And of course, if you want to go on beyond that, you can talk about when he's dying,
right,
and that temple veil being ripped from top to bottom.
Yep.
It says no more separation.
That's right.
And that's really what the Christmas story is, of that process.
Yes.
And so I'm grateful.
Me too.
That he came to where we are.
Amen.
And so that's kind of what I wanted to share. I don't know if that's exactly what you've been doing. That's what.
No, that's great. And actually, too, that ties right in. As I'm getting ready for the Sunday message, that's kind of the theme for this week is God loved us enough to step into the mess, onto our messiness, and kind of like the way that the message puts that. I love the way it's worded. God, he moved into the neighborhood. We're grateful for that. Without like you said, Christmas is the beginning. It's finalized, done away with at the cross. So I thank you, Jeff. I really appreciate that. Hey, if you live in the Estill, Kentucky area, or anywhere near us, or maybe you're just driving through for the holidays and looking for a place to come work, here at Ravenna Church of the Nazarene, we have services at 11 a.m. Eastern time every Sunday. You can catch the entire. If you can't join us in person, we'd love for you to join us on our Facebook live stream. Just go to the Ravenna Church of the Nazarene Facebook page. If you have a prayer request or anything like that, and you'd like to send us a message, just check out ravnaz.com. I'm sure we'll respond to that some way, shape, or form. So, anything else you'd like to add, Jeff?
It's pretty much sums it up.
I appreciate you coming on and sharing that with us.
I appreciate the opportunity.
Are you ready for more game picks?
I hope so.
All right. Well, we're moving to these late afternoon games. There's 4 of them this week, which now that the bye weeks are over, we might actually have more games to choose from. The last few weeks have been kind of slim pickings. Cardinals versus the Broncos. I'm actually picking the Broncos to win. I haven't heard if Russell Wilson's going to play or not. I know he got knocked out of that last game. But I think the Broncos defense is going to give the Cardinals trouble, especially with Kyler Murray out for the season. I think Colt McCoy's he can move somewhat, but I don't think he's going to be able to move enough to, which is again bad for me because I have James Conner at running back, but be overall impact too negatively.
I think he may do all right. I think he may be their bright spot. I'm picking Broncos here too. I actually went back and looked at the games that McCoy played in previously, and they didn't score a lot of those games. So I actually thought about pivoting off my defense. Denver was available.
Yeah.
And I've used Denver's been pretty good for, streaming defense. But as I said before, the Ravens have been pretty good to me since I picked them up, and my intent was to ride the season with them unless something drastic happens. So I'm not picking the Broncos defense up, but I do think their defense keeps them in this game and gives them opportunity.
Patriots versus the Raiders. I'm picking the Patriots in this one. I think Belichick is going to find some way to take away Josh Jacobs because Josh Jacobs has been a monster for the Raiders. He's actually the number one scoring running back was Josh Jacobs. But I think Belichick's going to find a way to take him away, and then the Raiders are going to be in trouble. I mean, they'll find a way to get to Adams some, I think, but not enough to win the game. So
I'm not sure I'm convinced. The Raiders.
Josh McDaniels might pull one over old boss, huh?
It's possible.
Titans versus the Chargers. The Titans, I don't know what's going on with them. They've really struggled the last couple of weeks, and maybe there's more to that story of them getting rid of the GM than what I first realized because they were winning and they fired him, and so that didn't make sense. But maybe they were trouble to brew in the locker room or behind the scenes that we're not aware of, and I think it's starting maybe to show up on the field maybe a little bit, or maybe it's just who the Titans have played. Who knows? But the Titans have. Henry has not been nearly as effective as he was earlier in the year, so I'm picking the Chargers.
He looked really strong first quarter.
Yes.
Last week.
Yeah.
Not much after that. I'm going Chargers in this one as well. I actually think they're looking a little better, and
yeah. But I think Mike Williams coming back last week showed us what the offense was supposed to be all season. Because with Williams and Allen finally being healthy, that passing game looks dangerous, and you have to worry about Eckler out of the backfield, and even Everett actually came alive last week. I've had him a couple times on the team this year. Both him and then Ingram from the Jaguars both had decent games last week, and I didn't have either one of them on the roster anymore.
So. Well, I actually dropped Njoku, and he wound up 20-ish somewhere in that neighborhood. So, there were a few out there last week that really played a little better. Tight end was a little better spot. Kelsey.
Yeah, Kelsey struggled last game.
He didn't really have that much.
I need him to struggle again this week, but I'll get more into that here in a minute. Bengals versus the Buccaneers. I'm taking the Bengals in this one. Buccaneers game last week against the 49ers. And yes, the 49ers defense is good, but there were a couple throws where I thought just Tom was under. I felt like his arm isn't quite where it was this time last year in the beginning of the year. Maybe time has caught up to him finally, but I could be wrong. I've said that before, but I think the Bengals are going to just playing great. The Bengals offense with Chase back is just unreal. And then I think P. Ryan kind of emerging as a solid number 2 backup running back. And him and Mixon are quite the 1-2 punch. So I think the Bengals will overwhelm the Buccaneers.
Yeah, I'm going with Bengals as well, and I don't think you ever want to count Brady out.
No,
Um, Even when he retires, he doesn't retire, and
no.
so it scares me a little bit as a Bengals fan. It's not exactly a matchup that I'm thrilled to be having, but certainly feel a bit better about it this year than in years past.
Yeah.
So.
All right, Jeff. We're on to the section I call "My Team Struggle." This is the show on HBO, the NFL Hard Knocks, where they're following an NFL team through training camp. They started an in-season one. This kind of I do with fantasy football. I kind of share what's going on with my team. I kind of go position by position. Feel free to jump in and share where you're struggling with, what you're dealing with. As I shared with you before, audience, that Jeff and I are in a league together. It's a 12-team custom scoring. We have points for completions, points for targets, points for carries. I think that's about all of them I can think of. Maybe a little bit of extra help on defense somewhere. But I'm 5-8. I got some help last week with some people losing. So I'm just thrilled to meet. After starting off 1-6, I'm happy. Uh, but you?
Well, I started off the season 3-5, and wasn't looking real good, and I struggled particularly with running backs early on. A lot of injuries. I lost a couple other players kind of early. Trey Lance was a second quarterback I picked up. Um, that didn't pan out. But Javonte Williams goes down, and that hurt.
Yeah.
Hurt a lot. and then Rashad Penny, and J.K. Dobbins was a pick that I knew that I was going to have to wait for.
Right.
And so he was sitting there waiting, but I wasn't able to use him to start the season. And then when he did come back, I really game.
Right.
I was letting him sit on the bench a week and thought, kind of see how this plays, and he had a pretty nice game. And so then I started him the next week, and it wasn't so good. And then of course he had some issues, had to have another surgery, and he back last week looked pretty good. I didn't have to start him, so once again he was. But I've kind of struggled with my running backs, particularly the ones that I drafted, and I've had to just kind of pull together from waivers and from free agency, and I actually feel like I have a decent group of backs. Had 4 last week that scored around 30.
Right.
Some a little over. I think one was 28, 29. Was one of those. Dobbins was on my bench. But of course, Pierce, it looks like he's going to miss some time and may actually not be a playoffs, depending on how long he's out. But I feel like I've got, barring more injury, at least a group that through. Jeff Wilson last week, he was on my bench. He looked good to start with.
Right.
He had 20-yard run or something.
Right.
And, came up lame, and I'm not starting him this week, but I'm going to hold on to those guys, and maybe they're still useful to me somewhere down the road. But started 3-5, and feel very fortunate to season 9-5. So
yeah, you went on a bit of what, six game winning streak, kind of into the
and had
playoffs.
kind of a nice run there at the end. It wasn't necessarily always because I was scoring a lot of points, but I was catching matchups. Um, so I'm not sure how things go from here, but I feel fortunate to have.
Neither one of us were in the bottom five. That's what meant. All right. Well, as we're heading into the playoffs, I'm gonna kind of share where I'm going, where my problems for my lineup are. Jeff, feel free to share what your concerns are. At quarterback, I have Geno Smith as my starter at the moment. He's playing tonight, so I'm gonna have to make a decision here fairly quickly. He's going against the 49ers defense. In the week 2 when they faced them, they held 7 yards passing, no touchdowns, and 1 interception. And Geno really had a bad game last week too. So I'm very concerned. Actually, Jeff is who I traded for to get Geno. I can't remember who I traded. Needs a running back, and Foreman had a nice little stretch there, I think. And so
I had one game that he didn't do a whole lot, but he's been a big plus.
Yeah,
and I'm counting on him to have a nice game this week. I need it.
Yeah. So I felt like the trades kind of worked out for both of us. Because I was going with Derek Carr, but Derek Carr really was very inconsistent, and Geno's been very consistent since I've had him. But again, I'm concerned this week. I mean, the 49ers defense is tough. I know. But here's my other options. I have Mike White on the bench, and he's going against the Lions, which I think is a good matchup for him. But he's questionable, and I don't know if you saw the hit he took, but I've seen the spear move in wrestling, right? You see him get taken out. He really experienced it for real, and it was bad. Will he play? And even if it plays, is he going to be the same quarterback we're used to seeing? I did go out and pick up Deshaun Watson free agency. According to the ESPN numbers, they kind of have as a favorable matchup for Watson against the Ravens secondary. But at the same time, too, you are right. The Ravens defense has been playing a little better here down the stretch. So I don't know. I got to make a call here pretty quick, though. So,
well, I've enjoyed watching Geno this season, and I had picked him up to have for my bye week when Mahomes was off. I hadn't intended to roster a second quarterback. Now I've actually only picked another one up.
Right.
It's been kind of an odd thing. Not everybody, but most of our league has rostered a second quarterback, and I was getting really nervous that either Mahomes gets hurt or should they. And this was a couple of weeks ago. I was concerned should clinch, playoff spot that would give them home field. That maybe he sits, and I guess too. I didn't really realize. I don't know how I missed, but I didn't realize that our championship was week 17. Really about week 18.
Right.
And so I thought, well, week 18, he may not play.
Mm-hmm.
And so I had traded away Smith because I didn't really feel like I needed a point. But the way the quarterbacks have been picked up, there's not a lot there.
No.
And with no way of knowing it dropped.
Yeah.
I thought I probably ought to grab somebody just in case, just for some insurance.
Yeah.
So, but that's kind of how that Geno Smith trade happened. I only used him the 1 week, didn't feel like I needed him, and I was desperate need for a rush.
Right.
And so.
Yeah, Jeff here doesn't have to. The quarterback's the one spot he hasn't really had to worry about all year. He picked up Mahomes in the first round. But the way our league's set up, quarterback is your moneymaker. And let's just say Mahomes is the highest scoring player in our league this season at the end of the regular season. So you haven't really had to worry about quarterback too much.
Not too much. His game was passed. Not what it has been. He had Denver and he threw 3 interceptions, but the one time he made me kind of nervous, the defense, and for your offense play, it's great if your defense scores and it's your defense.
That's right.
But it's not really great and it keeps your quarterback on the bench.
That's right.
It doesn't give him that offensive series. That touchdown is not his; it's a defensive player, and that actually happened to me a couple times. Happened with Mahomes, but it also happened to me one week with Zeke.
Yeah.
He's kind of alternating series with Pollard and series and now the opponent, I don't remember who it was, they've got the ball, and so it's going to be Zeke's turn next, or that
right.
if it follows the pattern, and I think a little bit of a lead. It's Colts, I think.
Yeah, as the Colts, yep. Because I remember you were worried they're going to take him out.
So here I am. I've not quite scored enough to win. I'm down, and they have a takeaway. They score on. I'm like, great. They're up enough now. Do they bring him back? And it was down. I think I needed 2 or 3 points to, and
right.
I'm like, if he just get a couple more touches, I'll be good. And it turned out he played.
Yep.
And he actually scored. And then I'm like, get him out. I've got enough. I don't need a fumble. And so, that was kind of you don't want defense scoring if it's not your defense.
Definitely not. Running back one, I have Austin Eckler. He's got the Titans this week. I am a little concerned because the Titans are ranked second against opposing running backs, but again, I think is one of those backs that he's going to get enough touches in the game where it doesn't really matter who he's playing. It might impact his overall scoring a little bit higher or lower, but he's going to get enough to where it's going to be. It's not out. Right. It's a bigger risk.
After you get the volume, that's been one of the things that's been a problem for me a little bit, because so many of my guys are either backups or they're in a committee.
Right.
And one of the guys that I picked up to try to my issues at running back was Jeff Wilson.
Yeah.
And so, worked great until they made a trade. And then it's like, okay, now he's kind of worthless.
Yeah.
He's not going to get much. And so Miami picks him up. He is able to pick him up off waivers before I can grab him again.
Yep.
And actually, I believe I said that wrong. He picked him up after I dropped him.
Mm-hmm.
While he was, that's how it was. He was still with San Francisco. I dropped him because I didn't feel like that he had any value after the trade. And so I dropped him. And this other guy came up. And like the day before he goes to Miami, he drops him.
Oh,
so he's sitting there. And I was able to grab him. Kind of the other thing that has saved me to a certain extent. I don't recall the circumstances, but my daughter, who also has a team in the league, and it's I know really a big football fan, and she had Zeke on her team.
Yeah.
And I think she had a bye issue, and I'm not sure what happened, but she dropped him.
Yep.
And it was one of those kind of midweek drops that maybe kind of goes under the radar just a little bit. And he was sitting there, and I claimed him, and I didn't have. I went first on waivers. I had to worry about 5 or 6 other people possibly seeing
Right.
and grabbing him, and he maybe was. Did he sit out a game or two? Maybe there along the middle part of the season. I
Something
think
like that.
That may have been. He was injured, and she needed to pick somebody up to take care of a player on bye,
Right.
and that's who she chose. And I was shocked when I saw him there, and so I picked him up, and I had to stash him, I think, for a week, and then
Right.
um, but that was kind of a fortunate.
Right.
But,
Well, running back's a big concern for me this week, though. Along those lines, I mean, maybe not to the extent of what you had to. I got Jamal Williams, and he's kind of starting to split carries again. Last week was his first week in a while that he didn't score a touchdown. And he's got the Jets this week, but the Lions are going to have to run the ball. They can't just sit back and throw it every time. So
several of these guys that have been really, whether it's injury or just wear and tear, they've kind of dropped off a little bit.
Yeah.
Nick Chubb doesn't look quite as good, and Barkley's not.
He's not been playing real well.
No. Walker got hurt, but their running game out there is not quite what it had been. And,
yeah.
One of the things, it'd been a long time since I played fantasy.
Yeah.
I told you this. That, probably the last time I played fantasy, Clinton Portis as a rookie.
That's been a while.
Was one of my
right.
Was one of my big pickups, and so it's been a really long time. And one of the things that playing again that I've noticed that I didn't really notice when I'm just following my team.
Right.
Is the number of injuries.
Yes.
It's amazing how many of these guys have dealt with something, whether it's weeks, or if it's been a number of weeks, or if it's been season ending.
Right.
It's just kind of crazy.
Yes.
How many injuries there are.
I feel like there's been more this year than some previous. Especially, with your bigger name players. Like, usually maybe 2 or 3 of those will go down. This year, I feel like a lot of them have gone down. I don't know if that's due to the longer season. Freezing isn't as much, or what, or just the new turf that the players are all complaining about. Maybe it's a combination of all those things, but man, the injuries have been high this year. Who do you have at receiver this week that you're going with? I know you've not necessarily.
My receivers, running backs have been a problem because of injury.
Yeah.
Receiver draft problem. I really had gotten away from football for a period of time.
Yeah.
And so I was really kind of behind when I decided to take a team. I had girls in marching band for 8 years.
Yeah.
So that
cuts into football.
That really destroyed college football for me.
Right.
So I DVR'd the Wildcats, and that's pretty much football I got now. Because I'm DVRing it, I'm not there to see it on Saturdays because I'm somewhere with marching band, and that's pretty much a season kind of thing.
Yeah.
I'm watching college football on Sunday.
Yeah.
And when you live in a house of women folk, they don't want to watch a lot of football, and so you watch that college happy with you if you're watching NFL too.
Yes.
And then let's be honest, I don't want to turn this political, but I was disturbed by some um, display of protest. Not that I suggest that they maybe shouldn't protest,
Right.
but just the way they did, and that bothered me,
Right.
that kind of led me to not really be real involved in watching NFL games, even though obviously the band didn't completely stop me from that, but I behind.
Right.
And I chose not to do an auto draft. I wanted to choose my players, and I tried to kind of be prepared.
Right.
And the receivers I took in the draft, um, I started out with Pittman, Christian Kirk, and Sutton.
Right.
And we all know what happened with Denver. I mean, they were a disappointment all
Yeah,
the way
they haven't.
around.
They still haven't figured it out.
And get a good game from one. I also had Wandale Robinson.
Sure.
I also had Wandale Robinson, and he got hurt early on first game, and sat out for a period of time. I finally had dropped him. Um, didn't really understand the whole IR thing that would have allowed me to sat him at that early stage. Now, the fantasy football I played before was a little different.
Right.
And so this was kind of new all the way around. Um, but I didn't really get much production from him at all. I did pick him up when he came back, and probably his best game, he was on my bench. But that's kind of been the story of my wide receivers.
Yeah.
They've my best wide receiver of the week is my.
Yeah.
And so I've struggled. I've had some single digit weeks from some guys that shouldn't have single digit weeks.
Right.
I got really frustrated with the whole Pittman Sutton Kirk thing, and was ready to be done with all of them. And made a trade offer. I don't remember if it was Sutton or Pittman that I offered for Gabe Davis. And he came back and offered Gabe Davis for Christian Kirk. Well, I'm done with all three, so it really doesn't matter.
Right.
I'm good.
You're just
I'm good to be done with what I can be done with.
Right.
And so I agreed to it, and Gabe Davis pretty much has been. They were. He's not
right.
he's not very dependable, or he hadn't been. And I really hesitate to play him week in, week out, and had that same thought. I was listening to some commentators, and they kind of liked his spot this week, and I think they kind of convinced me. I'm going out on a limb and predicting a long score for him this week, and that may be more hopefulness than belief. I don't know, but he's due.
Yeah,
he's due for. And if you don't get a big play out of much, he doesn't get targeted a whole lot, and honestly, when he has been targeted, it doesn't seem to me that he has the greatest of hands. Sometimes,
no,
he's had some drops that he shouldn't have had.
Right.
But kind of make a long story short, at some point, I dropped Sutton to pick somebody else up, and I dropped. I felt like that he was nearing a pretty rough stretch.
Yeah.
He doesn't have a great end of season, and as far as schedule goes, and he had one of his better games.
Yeah, that's the way it goes, though, right?
But then he, had a low single digit score the next week, so didn't feel bad about it at all. But I've got Don's on my bench that I may move in. I picked up Hollywood when he came back.
Oh, that's probably good.
And of course, he's got Denver this week.
Yeah.
And so I'm not sure about him. I'm waffling between him and Peoples Jones and Josh Palmer. I picked him up, and he's sitting on my bench as well. But with seeming to get their wide receivers back on track, his value would appear to not be what it had been. He had a couple of good games for me. My brighter spots.
Right.
So that's kind of my decision. I've got to decide. Made that bold prediction. I've got to play Davis.
Yeah, you got to play him now.
I got to play him now. But I am a little bit torn about whether to just go ahead and go with Hollywood and hope that he gets enough looks that they may concentrate on Hopkins and some looks. So I've not made that decision yet.
Well, that's kind of where I am with Tyreek Hill. I have him at my receiver one spot, but he's questionable. He had the ankle injury where it kind of took him out for parts of the game last week. I can't imagine playing in the snow that he's going to be able to. That's a good ankle. But if he plays, I mean, it's Tyreek Hill. I'm going to keep him in there. If he's at all scheduled to play, I'll probably keep him. But I did pick up Pittman. He was available in free agency to as an insurance policy.
Good luck.
Yes, I don't know how good of an insurance policy it is.
I'm not sure that that's much of an insurance policy. No. He may have a good game.
Yes.
They are saying that those.
They're saying that, but I'll believe when I see it. Now, what I am the Chargers, and I didn't realize this, but the Titans' pass defense, they're actually ranked 32nd against opposing receivers. So that should be a very beneficial matchup for me. You're talking about the Cardinals and the Broncos. I'm still going to roll with James Conner at the flex because, well, again, the way our league's formatted, 3 running backs is to win unless you have one of those top receivers that goes off every week. But again, James Conner's a volume type guy. Then I got Dalton Schultz versus the Jaguars, which he's kind of weeks had some pretty decent games in a row. But that's kind of what rounds out my offensive side of things. And I got Brett Mayer at kicker for the Cowboys, which I think, if I remember right, you said you were eyeballing him, and I picked him up.
With the intent I dropped him so I could pick up Peoples Jones.
Right.
And I didn't really have anybody that I wanted to drop.
Uh-huh.
And I suspect eventually that Pierce I can drop him to my IR. And I'm thinking, kicker, there's some guys out there. So I drop my kicker, pick up Peoples Jones, but and all's good.
Right.
If I've got 2 backs that are questionable, I'll drop them. I'll pick up. If not, I'm gonna have to drop a receiver. But I did that. It's the Seattle kicker.
Yeah.
And in the middle of the night, I wake up, but it hit me. He plays Thursday.
Mm-hmm.
And so if you're going to use him, you're going to have Thursday game time.
Yeah.
And so they're in the middle of the night. I've got my phone and I'm scrolling through the list of kickers. I'm like, oh, there we go. And so I went ahead. I went through with my plan, dropped him, picked up my receiver, and as of last time I looked, doubtful, which does not allow me to drop him. Yeah, his status hadn't changed. And you took the kicker that I was interested in if I was going to have to pick somebody else up.
Right.
So I'm not sure how it's going to work out. We'll see.
Yeah.
I'll either take somebody else or I may look at my receivers before game time and go ahead and make the drop too. And that's fine. I mean, it's kind of a gamble at this point. 5. Anything else is gravy. And I like gravy.
Yes.
But it'll be extra.
Yeah.
And it's not been too many weeks ago that this week in this first round I beat, and at that point in time he had not lost a game.
Yeah, he was undefeated for a long time.
He was undefeated, and so I went back earlier today and was looking at the scoring for that game, and our lineups have changed a little bit, but not a lot.
Right.
And I actually feel pretty good about but the one glaring thing with the game that I won back a few weeks ago is in our league, and of course, scoring's a little bit different, and it looks a lot different than scoring you see in some leagues. But Mahomes scored 107.
That's right. That was his big game.
And so he has Josh Allen.
Yeah.
And Josh had an okay game, a little better game than what he's games. But that really probably is what put me over the top.
Yeah.
And I don't think I can expect that.
No, I don't know. Maybe hopefully.
Houston's quarterback, I think they're ranked like 3rd.
Yeah.
Now that, I don't know if that plays out in this case. Mahomes is Mahomes, and
yeah.
If he can't, he has so many. Both of mine, I had MVS one week.
Yeah.
He's throwing the ball to 10 different people.
Yes.
But not him.
No, everybody but the guy you had.
Everybody but.
Yes.
That was a bad play at wide receiver.
Yeah. Really, the only person the Chiefs that catches the ball that I think is worth rostering is Kelsey. Outside of that, maybe you could string one in the backs if you need to. Other receivers, you just don't know who's going to get the ball.
Somebody's going to have a good game.
Yeah.
You just don't know who it is. And with the luck that I've had, guarantee I'm going to pick the one that doesn't get targeted.
Yes. So you said you're rolling with the Ravens defense. Is kind of I'm actually going with the Panthers this week because they're actually averaging 15 points a game, and they're projected for 10 this week against the Steelers. So I thought no matter who the quarterback is, that's a pretty good sign. So let's say you said you're facing the guy who was number 1 for most of our season. He was undefeated. I had to beat him to get into the playoffs. You beat him once, and you get him in the first round. And then I'm facing the guy that the highest scoring team in the league all season long. I beat him 2 weeks ago because the game where Lamar went out in the first quarter. But now I got him again this week. I'm feeling pretty good. I'm only projected to lose by 1.2 points at the moment. Pretty good. But I don't think I can count on Lamar leaving in the first quarter again.
No.
So I'm not, if I win this round, it'll be a miracle. But I don't know. I think we at least have some reasons to be optimistic about where our teams are.
I feel a lot better than I did at the beginning of and like I said, my draft was not spectacular. I had some good guys on my roster, but
right,
they should have been a little later pick. I thought going in I had a pretty good game plan, but it kind of shook me up when I start seeing quarterbacks going in the first round. I wasn't expecting that.
Yeah.
And Mahomes was sitting there. He was my first pick. I kind of changed my strategy and missed out on some players that I would like to have kind of built my roster around. Of course, he's not a bad player to build around, but um, I probably did fall farther down into that running back pool than I would like to have. And
Right.
And then to have the kind of injuries I had to running backs, it was a little hard to.
Right. Well, how about you? How's your team doing? Is your game for the playoffs? Do you have any questions? Post them in the comments. Send them in if you want some terrible advice. We'll give it to you. I don't know how good it is ourselves, so it can't be the worst thing. Maybe we can help you bump your way through it. 2 more game picks left, Jeff. 2 more before we wrap up. Our primetime games this week. I didn't even realize this was a primetime game when I was looking at the schedule. But the Giants versus the Commanders. I'm actually taking the Commanders. I think the Commanders are going to sneak into the playoffs, even with all the house stuff that's going on within the organization. I think the Commanders are going to find some way to just sneak in, just to annoy everyone. So,
yeah, this was kind of a toss up for me, and I actually went Giants.
Okay.
Not a lot of scientific thought. Just that's kind of my
Yeah. All right, last one, Monday Night Football. Actually, I think I'm excited about this Monday night game. The Rams versus the Packers. Record-wise, it's not the most exciting matchup, but you have Aaron Rodgers. Is he near the end of everything? Is he going to ride off into the sunset, or is it just the end of his time with the Packers? Is he going to move on? Some people are linking him to the Colts, which that sounds about like something the Colts will do, is sign some older quarterback that should be retired and just keep the problem going. But then the Rams, which the Rams right now are a fun story because Baker Mayfield last week came in 48 hours with the team. I didn't realize this, but he actually did not know he was signed by the Rams yet when he booked his flight to LA. They was going. So, and then once he got there, he didn't know his teammate's name. He didn't know the playbook. He doesn't even know where to find the locker room at the end of the game. But somehow he comes in and leads the game-winning drive in that one. So it's an incredible story. But I think honestly, Baker was with a coach that is an offensive genius for one, and 2 will put him in positions to win games and best utilize his abilities. So I think the Rams are. I think they're gonna sneak this one out.
Last week's schedule had some really interesting storylines.
Yes.
And the Baker Mayfield was obviously one of them.
Yes.
When I saw that they had released him, that Jimmy Garoppolo had gone down, and what are they doing there?
Right.
And I sent a text. I think I sent that to you and our friends that have kind of had a three-way chat going through some of these games, and I said, what's the chances that Baker winds up in San Francisco? I was kind of joking, kind of the whole thing, and then it wasn't very long that it was announced that he was going to the Rams, and the idea that he would start.
Yeah.
Or well, he didn't start, but he may as well have.
Yeah.
He was there from pretty much the beginning,
and he actually looked good most of the game.
But I went to bed, so I missed the final drive.
I remember texting you. You said I was going to sleep.
I was, it was time to get some rest. I didn't have any dog in that fight. I was done, and so there was that storyline. But the other one was the whole thing with the GOAT. and Purdy out
Yes.
in San Francisco. What story?
Yeah.
And I had read. I don't know. I'm assuming that this is the case, but his parents had tickets to the game before they ever had any idea that he was going to be. And they'd gotten them to see
I
Brady.
hadn't heard that. That's awesome. That's awesome.
I mean, I read that. I don't know. I can't give credit to who it was because I don't remember. But they had purchased tickets weeks before Brady play, and lo and behold, their son gets the start and goes off.
Yes.
I mean,
That's the game of his life.
And so if nothing else comes from his career, what an amazing memory to have.
Yes.
And so that's it's pretty awesome.
Yeah.
I enjoyed some of the video that I saw later. I think that game too, if I'm not mistaken, bowed out before it was over.
Yeah.
But to see him greeting his parents there in the stands after the game, it was. Yeah. Sometimes it's a little bit hard, I think, to put a human face on.
Yes.
What they do.
Yeah.
And
yeah.
How incredible was that for him?
Yeah.
How incredible was it for his parents?
Amazing.
Oh. And
yeah. Well, the other funny thing that came out of that game is I don't know if you saw the end of it, but they got one of the linebackers, the 49ers, that had intercepted Brady, took the ball back to Brady and had a Brady autograph. You're talking about putting a human face on it. Like, if you're Tom Brady in that moment, that guy's coming to this ball, it was a big, dumb mistake on your part to throw it. This guy's wanting your autograph. And kudos to Brady for doing it with a smile on his face, but I don't know that I've been able to.
I wasn't a Patriots fan, so I'm not.
I definitely was not.
I'm not a Brady. But I think with his moving to Tampa Bay, it maybe changed my opinion of him a little bit.
Yeah.
Not that I don't know. It made me a little bit more likable. I couldn't be a Patriots fan. I just couldn't deal with. There's no doubt what he's done has been incredible. It's been kind of sad to see his season go.
Yeah.
He's had the off-field stuff that he's had to deal with, and there again, always the celebrity. We don't put the personal.
Yeah.
And that's he had a fairly long marriage, and it's tragic for it. It did, but my pick for that game, I went with the Packers. I'm not sure that the Baker magic carries on.
Yeah, well, the Packers are fighting for a playoff spot still. As poorly as they played, they still have a little bit of hope. So, well, I appreciate you all listening in on us. Hopefully, you have a good fantasy football week. Hopefully, we continue. So we can wish each other luck.
I think if we meet, it has to be in the finals.
It's gonna have to be in the championship game. So, but if you enjoyed this podcast, be sure to check out my other ones, the Dirt Path podcast, uploaded in podcast form. Follow me on TikTok. I'm the Dirt Path Pastor on there. I do some daily devotional videos, other videos, and things like that. Until then, until Tuesday, where we recap this thing. This is either the beginning of. We get 2 more episodes if I win this week, so we'll see how after that. So there might be 3 episodes left, or there's 1. We'll find out over the weekend. So until then, happy fantasy football.